Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how you can intuitively read tarot cards. So I completely understand the majority of us out there do not have the time to memorize a full tarot deck as soon as we buy it. We just want to get into it and start using it. And so just a little bit about the tarot, not oracle. Tarot cards are based on the original Rider-Waite deck. And so there's this very specific number. So there are 78 total cards in the traditional Rider-Waite tarot deck. There are 22 major arcana cards and 56 lesser arcana, or they call them the minor arcana sometimes. And each of these cards has a completely different meaning. And there's 4 suits. So major versus minor, and then all the suits having a different meaning, and then each individual card within those suits. It's a lot to memorize. But sometimes we just don't have the time. And so I want to show you guys how you can read tarot cards intuitively. Now I would automatically recommend getting oracle cards because oracle cards say the meaning a lot of times on the actual card. The hard thing about the tarot is sometimes they don't even have the names written down or even the numbers very visible. So this card has a very visible number 8. But unless you're going to take the time to memorize all of these cards, sometimes you just need to understand how to read them and how to read them quickly. Now I will say one of the biggest keys to reading tarot intuitively is you also have to understand how to ask questions correctly, which check out my video on that because it's super important and it's such a big part of it that it really can't be skipped, but I'm not going to go over that in full detail in this video. So my absolute biggest tip on how to read the clairs intuitively is to hone your psychic ability. I will preach that night and day every day. And I think that using your psychic ability, you should be able to read anything. You'll get an understanding of clairs and how you receive information, and you can basically look at the cards. You might have no idea what their meaning is, but you can ask, what does this card mean? And if you're using your clairs and if you have that psychic ability honed and strengthened, you're going to be able to look at it and just get immediate hits, whether it's claircognizantly, clairvoyantly, clairaudiently. So that is my biggest tip. And I know that's not always the fastest tip because you have to practice. The psychic ability is something that you constantly have to work at. And the more you practice it, the more reliable and the more accurate it becomes. So I'm going to assume that you guys are already doing that anyways, and I want to give you guys some additional tips here for how to read cards intuitively. So to kind of go over these tips, I'm going to use this new card deck that I just bought. I do not have it memorized at all, so I thought this would be perfect. And this is the Tarot of the Divine. I will link it in the description down below if you really like the artwork and you want to check it out. Now, if you want to understand how to actually pull cards and ask the right questions and all of that, check out my other video. I kind of made like a quick start tarot guide. How do you get into it? But for the example for this video, I'm just going to ask, what do I need to know most right now? And I'm going to shuffle, kind of having done everything that I've done ahead of time, connecting to the right guides, setting my boundaries, protecting myself. You guys know my spiel. I am going to ask again, what do I need to know most right now? And I'm going to pull a card. And let's say I have no idea what this card is, which I might not. And here is the card. This is a pretty card. So the first tip I have for you guys is, what are your first impressions when you look at this card? Go with anything that you get. You might get some feelings, you might get an idea, you might have a memory pop into your mind. You might just get a download of information of like, oh, I know what this is about. And if not, totally okay. But the first thing to do is always start with your first impressions. First impressions, like I'm just like getting like dirty, not taking care of yourself. And I'm just getting that from like the visual of this card. If I'm thinking about that as a message, I could be, oh, maybe the message is you're not taking good care of yourself right now. And that probably is a little bit true. So go with those first impressions. You might hear something, you might see something. As long as you're sort of just going with what you're getting and not analyzing it and just sort of, even if you have to write it down so you don't forget, do what you got to do. But as soon as you start to practice more, and if you're really getting in touch with your clairs, you'll start to realize, oh, I'm picking this up clairvoyantly. Oh, I'm picking it up clairaudiently. But the biggest thing is don't immediately analyze it as soon as you feel something. Keep asking, what does this card mean? What does this card mean? Because as soon as you switch into analyzing, you're using your left brain. You're using that part of your mind that is logical, analytical, and that's the exact opposite of what we want to be doing with our intuition. We want to be always staying in that receptive mind. My next tip is to get very visual with the card. Look at the visuals, both literally and symbolically. So you can, and I mean, get even down into the minute details. There's a little boat over here. There's like a head over here. She's riding some sort of animal. She's carrying a spoon. Even the colors. And so what you want to do is pay attention to all those little things. Is there anything that sticks out to you? Anything that you're really feeling drawn to? And then you can go further and ask, why am I feeling really drawn to this little boat in the background? So you can interpret these symbolically, or you can interpret them literally. But you just want to ask yourself on each of these items, how does this make me feel? What do I feel about this boat? Oh, this boat just feels really lonely. And again, don't worry too much about the clairs here, because we're wanting to pick it up in any way that we can. I'm going to pull another card really quick so that we can just kind of get another example. So same question, what do I need to know? Visuals. I don't know what this card literally means. I know it's part of the tarot, but what are the things that visually stick out to me? Ooh, she's in a box. There's two people in a box. They're going somewhere. There's little houses up on the hill. So I'm asking myself, what do I feel? I feel contained, but I feel protecting. I feel like I'm protecting maybe somebody. I'm guiding them. And that's kind of the visual of what I'm getting from this card, very literally. This is not symbolic. This is like, oh, I'm protecting someone, I'm helping them, I'm assisting them, I'm taking them to where they need to go. So even if you don't know exactly what the card means, you can pick up on the visuals and create a story and go with it in your mind. If you're reading for somebody else, just go with those intuitive hits, because that is how your guides are communicating to you. They probably know you don't have the cards memorized, so they're trying to get across the message in any way. I'm going to pull one more card for example. Here's the third card, same question. And even if you might know what the cards do mean, as far as the tarot goes, this is just another way to read them. This still works. You can find more meaning than what's just in them. So the number of the card might stick out to you. I mean, even the name of the card. So this is saying the Fool. And if you don't even know what the Fool card is about, you can kind of make your own judgment based on that. Maybe, nothing else in the card makes sense to you, but that one little phrase does. Pay attention to the colors too. How does it make you feel? I mean, this is artwork, and artwork makes us feel, and artwork is symbolic, and it is a way to communicate with each other. So some of these cards might make you feel sad or scared. Pay attention to those emotions, because those are feelings that you are getting that might pertain to the answer of your question. So the last tip I have is to just pull back. What are your overall feelings about these cards? Maybe one of these cards makes you feel really scared or sad, or maybe it makes you feel lonely. Pay attention to those feelings that are coming up. You don't have to know the book to get any sort of impressions off of these. They can all communicate something in their own way. Now, just to give further example, how I would interpret these cards, because I don't have them memorized, what stuck out to me most on this one was how grungy she looked. And so I'm feeling immediately like maybe one of the things my guides want me to know is they want me to take better care of myself. Theme that's been coming up a lot lately. The Fool card, I feel like I was drawn to the name of this immediately. And so I'm kind of asking what does that mean? What is that about? And then I'm immediately thinking of areas in my life where I've been rushing things too much and being a fool. And so I think they're trying to pay attention to that. The mermaid to me doesn't apply at all. And so sometimes when I read cards from other people, I say something like, ignore the name or ignore the picture. This is what I'm getting. And then this last card, I feel like it's in relation to my son. I'm sort of like guiding someone, I'm protecting someone, and that's what's going on in my life, and maybe that's confirmation that I'm doing a good job or something. And so that's kind of how I would interpret these cards. Again, not knowing at all what they stand for or they mean. And they might be completely different than what it means in the book, and that's okay. Because when you set out with the intention of reading it intuitively, your guides get that cue, and they're like, oh, okay, she's reading it this way, so we're going to make sure to bring up the cards that are going to communicate what we want. Versus if they know you're going to be looking in the booklet, then yeah, they might be going more by the booklet's answers. When I'm practicing and learning a new deck, I do a little bit of guessing, and then I do a little bit of looking in the book, and sometimes it further affirms it, or sometimes it's just another way to interpret that card. And that is something else I want to say, is that this one card might not mean the same thing every time you pull it. And that's what I love about tarot cards and oracle cards, is I might pull this for one person, and then I pull it for somebody else, and you know what? A different portion of this might stick out. Maybe I'm just really being drawn to the water and how alone they are and how stuck they are in the middle of this lake or something. And so don't feel like one card has one meaning. The more open you can be to different messages, the easier it'll be to interpret them all. So don't doubt it. The biggest thing you can do is doubt it. And when you doubt it, then you second guess yourself and you end up pulling a bunch of cards and not trusting anything that you get. So just go with it. And you'll know if you're wrong or you're off or you need to pull another card. With all of this, it takes practice. It takes practice not only to understand your intuitive ability, it takes practice to understand these cards and what the heck they mean. Which again is why I advocate for not even bothering with the cards, just understanding your psychic ability. You should be able to sit down using yourself and yourself only to answer any question that you might have. But again, I know that we're not all there yet. It takes a lot of practice. So these are great tools that you can use in the meantime. And if you want to learn more about how to kind of get into your psychic ability and really hone these things and conduct a reading, understand your clairs, check out my course, Basic Psychic Skills. I go over all of this information and more because I want to give you guys all the tools on how to basically read intuitively how I do. Now this was a question I got asked by one of you guys, and that is, okay, how do I thread a story? How do I figure out how multiple cards relate to each other? And my biggest piece of advice is understanding your spreads. And a spread is, okay, I'm going to assign a meaning to the number of cards that I pull and the order that they're pulled in. So the most common card is, the card spread is past, present, future. So that's telling you a story right there. Pretend you have a question about, what do I need to know about my relationship? And so instead of just pulling cards at random, use a spread. And so I'll be like, okay, someone wants to know about their relationship. Let's give a story. Let's give an outline of where it's been, where it's at now, and where it's headed. And so that's why I use the past, present, future spread. So I'm just going to do that for myself right now. So past, present, future. And so what I want to do with spreads is, I know it can seem overwhelming because you have no idea what these cards mean, but break it down individually first. Don't worry about the story yet, just break it down individually. But break it down in relation to where you pulled. So this is past. Same card that I just pulled. Same card, but perfect example, I'm totally feeling a different thing around this. I'm feeling like wild, crazy energy. That's what I'm feeling in relation to this card, which makes sense. When my husband and I first started dating, wild, crazy, fun energy. Erase that, move on to the next one. And when I say erase that, just kind of don't let it influence the next card. So this is the present. And again, I have no idea what this card means, but I'm going to look at it and go with first impressions. I'm going to go with feelings. I'm going to look at any of the images. Interesting. And so kind of what I'm interpreting with this card, just to give you guys some more real life examples, is that I'm seeing this person who's happy, they are dancing, and then I'm seeing these two scary guys in the back. They're making me feel scared. You know, maybe they're not actually scary in real life. Maybe they're a symbol for something strong or awesome. I don't know. But I feel like this sneaking energy. But the fact that this girl is unaware, to me that says like I'm just thinking outside forces creeping in and disturbing this happy relationship. And so when I think about presently in my relationship, I'm like, okay, that sort of makes sense. Like we have a lot of outside influences going on that's kind of threatening. I shouldn't say threatening as much as that gets in the way of our relationship. COVID, being worried about money, having a new baby, all of these things are sort of like external things that would totally make sense that are creeping in that, might be influencing our relationship. Now the future card, Wheel of Fortune, is definitely sticking out to me, and immediate thoughts there is money and being fortunate with money and good things are coming our way. I feel like this is a celebration. Like I feel like this is a happy card. I'm hearing dancing and singing. So I feel like future in regards to the relationship, really good, celebrating, awesome stuff. So now I have these 3 cards. How do I string them together to make a story? Well, you can see how my past, present, future sort of is helping that. You can see, okay, well, this is where we were, this is where we are now, and this is the future. So I think having the spreads not only helps you kind of create that story and understand the framing of everything that's going on, but it just gives you a little bit of direction. And so having a few spreads in your back pocket of knowing how to use them is super important.
So my battery died right here, but next I want to show you guys how you can make up your own spread as you go. So first what I'm doing is I'm asking the question, what do I need to know about this weekend? I have some family coming into town. So as you are shuffling, you want to ask, how many do I pull? And then in what way should I be laying them out?
I heard 1 card and then I heard 3 cards. So I pulled the first card up here and then I pulled the 3 cards. That's how I know that they are together, because I could have easily said 2 and 2 or 3 and then 1. And so that's how I know that those ones are related in some sort of way. And as I flip them over, I'm kind of asking, what is the spread here? And so I felt like this first one was like the core of the problem, the thing that kind of sums up the whole reading. And then the 3 down here I heard were obstacles. So they're all equally different obstacles. But just know that you do have to have an understanding of spreads in general for your guides to be communicating with you in this way. Again, this is like the more, I don't want to call it advanced, but in a way it is, because they're using a mixture of spreads because they know what I know about certain spreads. One spread that I often use with relationships is called the Bear Claw. Typically that spread has 7 cards, and sometimes my guides are like, do an abbreviated version of that. And they sort of give me a visual outline, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I might only do like half of it, but I still understand what's going on from like that half of a spread. So again, you have to kind of know the spreads to begin with. So reading these as examples, this is such a cool card. So again, individually, I don't know what this card means, but I'm immediately seeing coins, which I'm thinking of money. I'm thinking of sharing resources, because this old woman is sharing. She's giving. Some of the things just might not stick out to you at all. Like the mountain in the back not sticking out to me at all, like not feeling like that's relevant. She's giving the coins away, and I just feel like the energy behind this card is about giving. And because it was in reverse, to me, reverse cards are usually about the opposite, or that this is needed. So the giving energy is needed. So I'm feeling like immediately this weekend, what I need to be aware of is I need to give. I need to not withhold. I need to be forthcoming with myself or something like that. I need to give my time and energy to people, and it needs to be fair and it needs to be kind, like this little old lady. And then obstacles. This card is just coming up for everything. Which I'm so glad that I'm doing actual real examples in this video, because again, it could be that this card has a different meaning. I'm kind of going back to that self-care though, and I'm hearing that this time, and I'm cheating because I'm using my clairs. But if you're going by kind of what I'm saying of looking at the actual card, going with feelings, maybe you're drawn to something else. I am a little bit more drawn to this like bucking bronco, and maybe I'm almost getting a combination. Like, don't be reckless about your decisions and how you behave around people. Don't be crazy. Take care of yourself at the same time. Get away from these people. Maybe is kind of how I'm interpreting that. So the second card, that's a very interesting. I'm immediately drawn to the shadow, that sneaking energy. Someone's sneaking up and taking advantage of this wolf, and maybe the wolf I really associate with some spirit animal. I'm just immediately feeling like this is me and something is going to sneak up on me. There might be an unexpected situation. So maybe that's how I interpret that card. And then again, this card, the Fool. I do feel like this card is related to when I pulled it earlier. Again, I'm being drawn to the Fool. And, you know, my guides are communicating using this card because they know I've assigned a meaning to this. I know what it is right away. And so this card might very often for me communicate that foolish behavior. And so I'm feeling like the obstacle here is for me to not be such a fool. And, you know, don't do things that are foolish. With this weekend coming up. And so even though each of these cards is an individual obstacle, when I'm doing a reading for somebody, I like to pull back, and it is helpful for people, for you to string it all together as a whole, because sometimes a lot of this information can get forgotten or lost. So I'm kind of pulling back, and I'm doing these three first because this one was an overall arching card, if that makes sense. And so I want to end with that card. Summarizing it in brief, don't do anything reckless, don't do anything foolish. The fact that that's coming up twice to me is saying that you're more inclined to do that, so be very careful. But then also be aware of energy that's going to sneak up on you, things that might happen that you're not prepared for. Just kind of keep an eye out for it. And then going back to this card, I've already read this card, but overall giving energy, you know, to help all of this, to help this situation with this family coming into town. Maybe I can be more giving of my energy. If I'm pulling back as a whole, what is the general vibe of this card? And it's basically saying, Lauren, don't be stupid. Yes, it's important to watch out and, you know, be wary of things. But don't be stupid, don't be rash, and give, you know, be compassionate with your time and your energy. Don't be withholding. Great message, by the way. Super helpful. So if you are still struggling, feel free to learn more about the tarot. You don't have to pay for a professional course. I mean, you can. There's stuff on Udemy. There are people probably in your area teaching tarot card courses. I've seen ones where basically you work through 10 cards in one class, and then the next class you show up and work through another 10 cards. I really feel like with this work, if you don't do it in a way that resonates with you, it's just not going to stick. If you want to learn at home, these are the two books that I recommend. Again, I haven't even gotten all the way through them, but I've picked up a couple, and these are my favorites. This one is great for like a very quick breakdown, so it has the traditional Rider-Waite interpretation, and it has these really helpful boxes of keywords, strengths, reversed, not reversed, shadow, all that kind of good stuff. Now this one, I feel like is if you really need more than just memorizing, like some people are really awesome at memorizing, which is why I would recommend this book. But if you're really stuck and you need stories or images kind of or symbols in your brain to help you kind of group all these together, this book kind of groups them together based on vibe. For example, she groups them all together based on like the feminine archetypes. So she's got the Star, the Empress, the High Priestess, and she kind of groups them together. They might be completely random suits, but she groups them together so that it's easy to remember based on kind of what their energies are about. The great thing about both of these books is that they have example spreads in the back that you can use. Now again, if all of this is too complicated, try oracle cards. They are super helpful. They just have the names, and it sometimes is just very obvious and apparent on the front of those cards. I tend to gravitate towards oracle cards more, but I just love the artwork of tarot sometimes. And I do like the additional meaning and how much deeper you can go with the tarot cards. I'm not saying you can't go deeper with the other ones. It's just inherently all the things that are built into these cards, there can be so many different facets and meanings. I think it is totally okay to read for others while you are still memorizing a deck. I just think you have to be very upfront about, hey, I'm still memorizing this deck, so I'm going to have to look at the booklet, or I could be wrong. It's very important to say that anyways, but as long as you kind of give that little disclaimer. Now, I would never do that during a paid reading. I always use the cards that I am very familiar with during a paid reading, because I think it's a little unprofessional to be like, I don't know what this says yet, during a paid reading. But, when you're practicing, I think it's totally fine as long as you kind of give the person a heads up that you're doing that. And if you're still really struggling with the tarot, it might just not work for you, and that's totally okay. There are several tools that just don't work for me. Like scrying, I could just never get into, like having to visually focus on something. I need my eyes to wander sometimes, and so those tools just didn't work for me. And so tarot just might not work for you, and that's totally okay. That's why I make these videos on my channel, so you have all sorts of resources and you can try to find what works best for you. But again, if you're honing your psychic ability and you're using your clairs and you're kind of using your mental psychic abilities, you shouldn't have to use any tools at all. Tarot cards are just another fun way to hone in and get those answers. I use tarot cards often when I get stuck on reading myself. So I think my biggest thing that I want to say here is don't rely on it too much to where it becomes a crutch. Even I get into that mode a lot too. But just know that you can answer anything with your clairs, you can answer anything with your psychic abilities. You do not need these tools. Remember, at the end of the day, to go with your gut when it comes to these cards. The more you're going with your gut and you're trusting that you know what this card is about, the quicker and more easily you'll be able to get those psychic hits without using the cards in the future. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. I will see you in my next video. Please subscribe and let me know if there's something you want to see me do next.